What's up, YouTube? jDantastic here, and today doing something a little bit differently. I say that a lot these days. Maybe I'm not doing anything much differently. I'm doing something a little bit different and talking about Star Wars: The Last Jedi. I went back and forth on whether or not I wanted to make this video. And it's not a review, by the way. I'm not gonna like review the movie, and I'll kind of get into that in a second. And there will be spoilers. None of this is going to be spoiler free. This is going to be very spoiler heavy video. So if you haven't seen the movie yet, you probably should stop watching this video now, because I am going to go into stuff that happens in the movie that would for certain spoil it. So if you don't care about spoilers, then continue to watch, but otherwise you should get out of here. 3, 2, 1. Okay, so a little bit of backstory about myself and Star Wars. I'm a huge Star Wars fan, and when I mean fan, I mean like super fan. I enjoy everything Star Wars. I enjoy all of the movies. Yes, even the prequels. I actually think they're pretty good. And I think the reason for that is when I came into Star Wars, the original trilogy, I started watching those when I was very young. Now, obviously, I was born after those movies had come out and had been out for nearly a little over, well, A New Hope, a little over 10 years before I was born. But so roughly, 10 years later, I come into the story, I see the original trilogy, and they blow my mind. I'm hooked. I watch Star Wars over and over and over again, all 3 of the original trilogies. And then, wouldn't you know it, fate allows Star Wars to come back into my life in the form of the prequels. And so I think it actually helps me watching the prequels when I was younger, and I kind of grew up with the prequels being, the new Star Wars in my life. And so I didn't already have this, I wasn't an adult, I guess. So I didn't really have these kind of ideals and things in my mind. I was just watching these really cool Star Wars movies, and so I was able to kind of carry that with me into today. Now, the prequels are not perfect, don't get me wrong. There's so much wrong with the prequels, and the writing is kind of yikes, and some of the acting is even more yikes, and there's stuff in there that are not, they're not perfect movies, but none of the Star Wars movies are perfect. They've never been perfect, and they probably never will be perfect, no matter how much you would like to argue that they might be perfect. Even probably the most highly regarded Star Wars film of all time, Empire, if not one of the most highly regarded films of all time, was not very well received when it came out in theaters. It was actually split fairly down the middle, much like The Last Jedi is today. So that's a little bit about me. And when they announced that they were making a new trilogy, I was so freaking excited. I couldn't believe that I was getting even more Star Wars than what I had gotten as a child, and I want the series to go as far as possible, so that's kind of how I feel about it. And so you kind of know, well, I'm not going to do a review on the movie, because I probably would have enjoyed it regardless. They would have had to have done a really bad job for me to not enjoy the movie. I mean, so much would have had to have gone wrong for me. Like, I really love Star Wars that much. The games, the books, the shows, I've seen it all, I've read it all, I love it. And so that's why I'm not going to do just a full-on review, because it probably wouldn't be fair and my score would be different. But I did want to talk about some of the things that people are going back and forth on. And if you want to be in the comment section, I very much encourage you to be in the comment section, but be nice to each other, because it's crazy. I'm seeing people are just calling each other stupid and that they don't know what they're talking about and blah, 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 blah. And it's a movie. And at the end of the day, no one is stupid for liking or not liking the movie. And pretty much everything about it is objective. You can, subjective, sorry. It's not, there's no right or wrong. You can't claim that something is bad writing or claim that something is this, because it depends on how you look at it, and it depends on your perception of it. So someone can come out and say, well, that's just bad writing, and everyone knows it's bad writing, and it has to be bad writing because bad writing is bad writing. That's not true, because even the worst movies of all time, some people enjoy them. So you could say that that's bad writing, but someone out there is going to say that that's good writing. So it doesn't matter how much evidence or anything you have to say that parts of this movie are bad writing. That's not necessarily true, because it's all about perception. It's how it's perceived. So since I really did enjoy this movie, like really enjoyed this movie, I thought it was phenomenal. I think Rian Johnson did a great job, and I'm so excited for the future of Star Wars. But to start things off, I'm actually going to start with the cons of the movie. Things that I thought were, they took me out of the moment a little bit, or they were a little strange, and maybe I would have done them a little bit differently. Now, that's not necessarily to say that they were bad, but maybe they could have just been done a little bit differently or a little bit better. But the first thing, of course, is Leia's weird Force pull through space. Her being a Force user, obviously, I have no problem with that. I think that's phenomenal. I think it's really cool that she would have, you know, picked up on the Force. Obviously, she would be Force sensitive. She is a Skywalker after all. I think that part of it is really cool, but it was so strange. I think she floated too long. I mean, you know, I guess she was like kind of unconscious from the blast, and so she was just kind of floating around. And for all of you that said that she would have died instantly, you don't die instantly in space. I don't know where this rumor came from, but the second that you hit space, you don't die. You can live for a few moments, and so she did, obviously. And plus, you know, she's probably stronger than your average Joe because she is Force sensitive, so, you know, she probably could live a little bit longer than the average person. But you don't die right away in space, so you can just nix that argument right away. But it was very strange, and she just... It looked a little weird. I don't know. So I like the fact that she, you know, demonstrated her Force abilities, but the way that it was done was just kind of strange. Like, actually in the theater, I watched it, I'm like, okay. So it's like it's cool, but it's like, there was the fight between Luke and Kylo at the end, which is great. And Luke, I don't remember the exact words, I'm sorry, but I believe it was Luke said something along the lines of, "I'm sorry, Ben, I failed you," something like that. And Kylo shouts back, "You should be!" And it was, his delivery of the line was so, it was like, from my point of view, the Jedi are evil, you know, like, bad. I just feel like they could have been like, okay, you know, Adam, that was pretty good, but let's do a couple more takes and see if we can get this line to feel a little bit more natural. I don't know. I don't know if it was the way that it was shot or the way that he delivered the line, but it like completely took me out of that moment for a second. And actually several people in the theater kind of laughed because they were like, okay, calm down, guy. So that was another one. Holdo should have just mentioned the freaking plan. I mean, I get it that, you know, I can kind of see why she was doing what she was doing, but it would have been so easy to say, and again, you can say any of these things can happen, but then obviously the movie wouldn't have turned out like it would, but it would have been so easy for her to say, guys, I have a plan. I'm going to buy us as much time as possible. We're going to sneak on to these transports, and then we're going to send them secretly off into to this, you know, planet down below, because that will make sense and we can all get out of here. So why she just doesn't say, why don't you just say that? Just tell everyone you have a plan, and then it could possibly work out. Everyone would be on board. There would be no mutinies. There would be no people running off to casinos to try to help, you know, save these things because they think you're a terrible person. And even in the movie, like while I was watching the movie, I was like, why is she doing this? Like, is she really, is her character really just a plot device so that Poe can like take over and save the day? So her plan ended up being awesome, and she ended up actually being a really cool character, and sacrificing herself with like the coolest thing I've ever seen in a movie. I mean, come on, a freaking spaceship going light speed and just blasting into the other ships. Like, that was, I mean, I literally sat there like mouth agape for the next 10 minutes of the movie because that was so crazy. Again, that's another, her death was actually something that I kind of felt like it should have been something else. It could have been Akbar. You know, I think that would have been a fitting send-off for him. I also felt like it could have been Leia's. That could have been Leia's final sacrifice. I'm not entirely sure what they're gonna do with her character moving forward. I understand the difficult position because unfortunately we lost Carrie Fisher, and that is a terrible thing. Because she was phenomenal. She's our princess, but you know, how do you handle that the right way in the movie? Because they obviously had very large plans for the character, and obviously they're going to continue that. They did throughout this movie, but then, you know, you have to make that hard decision of, okay, so do we kind of rewrite some stuff and, you know, kill off her character in the series in a beautiful, impactful way, or do we keep her alive? You know, it kind of puts you between a rock and a hard place because there's no really good way to handle that moving forward. It's a very sad thing. And so, but I do think that either that moment would have been a good moment for Leia's, you know, final act of heroism. You know, she's lost Han, she's lost Ben. That could have been a really cool last ditch effort to help everyone get everyone hope. That would obviously, I mean, she is a symbol of hope, but that would kind of, you know, just solidify it forever. So that was another thing that I might have mixed up a little bit. And then the last thing, and this is kind of a funny thing, but when they went to the casino and it showed the track, the racetrack, I literally said, pod racing! Like, I got so excited, and it wasn't. It was just like these animals, cow, dog racing thing. I don't know I forget what they're called, but I was so excited. I was like, oh yes, it's gonna be pod racing, and it wasn't pod racing, and I was so let down by that. I couldn't believe that it wasn't pod racing. But into some of the stuff that I actually did enjoy, and some counterpoints to some things that people have been really upset about that I don't think necessarily determine, or necessitate that much disappointment. And again, it's opinionated. It's all opinionated. If you like the movie, that's great. If you didn't, I'm sorry, because that really sucks. I wish you liked the movie because it's such a good movie. But if you didn't, maybe 9 will bring you back on board. Who knows? Oh, and I did tweet out the other day, and I still stand by this. If you have not enjoyed a Star Wars film, not including, the TV series or the extended universe or the video games or whatever, if you have enjoyed anything Star Wars since the original trilogy, since 1983, you are no longer a Star Wars fan. I'm sorry, you're just not a Star Wars fan if you haven't enjoyed. Like, if the prequels came out and you were like, prequel sucks, and now you're like, The Force Awakens sucks, The Last Jedi sucks. Like, you're not a Star Wars fan anymore, man. Like, you haven't been a Star Wars fan for, 35 years or something crazy like that. Like, so, I mean, if you've enjoyed the other stuff that's coming out, then yeah, you're still a Star Wars fan. Your opinion kind of matters. But if you haven't enjoyed anything Star Wars since 1983, your opinion doesn't matter. You're not a Star Wars fan anymore. You're just living in the past, and it's time to let it all go, which they literally say that several times in The Last Jedi. So, but on to the character of Luke. Everyone is so upset because that's not Luke, and I can't believe that they would make Luke's character look like this. And I have kind of a major problem with all of that because basically in everyone's mind, people were expecting Luke to just be like this heroic, legendary, savior. He's going to get this lightsaber and, a halo is going to appear above his head and he's just going to go Super Saiyan Jedi and stomp the First Orders. I don't really know what people were expecting. I mean, I think they were expecting him to be a little bit cooler, but I don't think that anything that happened with Luke in the movie is off pace from what I would have expected to happen in the movie. It's even from the lightsaber thing. Now, could he have thrown it a different way? Sure. Was it done a little bit maybe too comedic or too lighthearted or something? Maybe. I don't know. I don't think so, but I guess you could argue that point. But I think him throwing the lightsaber away is exactly the same thing that Yoda would. We've seen that in the original trilogy. Luke goes to find Yoda to start his training, and Yoda literally ignores him and is like banging through pots and pans and going through his bag. And I can literally picture it in my head. Luke shows up, and he has Yoda's lightsaber, and he hands Yoda his lightsaber, and Yoda just being like, bleh, and tossing it, because he's literally tossing stuff over his shoulder in the original trilogy, and he hands him his lightsaber, and Yoda's like, bleh, and he throws it, and he doesn't care, because he's literally exiled himself. And people are saying that Luke doesn't have enough reason to exile himself, but again, I completely disagree with that. People are saying that Yoda did it because literally all hope was lost, and there was nothing left. Yoda had plenty to work with, if not more than what Luke had to work with, in my opinion. I mean, I don't know. Those points can be argued back and forth, but I think Luke exiled himself because he really failed in the biggest sense that he could possibly imagine. He let everyone down. He literally created the next Vader. So, like, in his mind, that's like the worst thing that he could have possibly done. And not only that, because the whole point of this movie is failure, and it's creating. It's letting you know that even though you adhere to someone as a legend, that legend at some point is just a person. So even though these legendary tales of Luke Skywalker passed around the galaxy, he's still just a guy, Just because he has legendary stories that follow him around doesn't make him any less human. And I think the failure was even worse because we actually see, because people were saying, oh my gosh, the Luke Skywalker that we know and love would never ignite his lightsaber, not even for a second. He would never even consider killing his own nephew. When he went to turn his very own father back to the light side, he almost lost it and was literally trying to kill Vader. I mean, he was like pumped. When he first showed up, he was like, there's light in you. I can sense it. We can be lovey-dovey and it'll be great. And why don't you just come back to the light side? But then the Emperor gets in his head and Vader gets in his head and he's talking about Leia, and Luke is like, boy, you better not. And he freaks out. and starts beating him down. And then he realizes that that's not the correct. So Luke has always been this kind of impulsive, flying off the handle, doing things very Anakin-esque, of like, you know, people are going to tell me one thing, or I think one thing might be the best way, but I'm going to go do it this way because I don't necessarily think everything through. He literally says in the movie it was for like a momentary lapse in judgment. And Luke, in the grand scheme of things, is no, I mean, he's the guy that bested Vader, but to rebuild the Jedi Order, Luke is no one, really. I mean, he has the Skywalker bloodline, but like, you know, restarting the Jedi Order cannot be an easy thing. It can't be an easy feat. And so, you know, I don't think that this momentary lapse in judgment or impulse is completely anti-Luke Skywalker's, you know, character, especially at this point. We don't, and he said, he literally, in his mind, he saw Kylo Ren, well, he saw Ben at that time, I guess he wasn't Kylo yet, but he saw Ben, and he saw pain, and he saw hurt, and he saw the next Vader. He saw that the next Vader was there, and in his mind, he thought, I can put an end to all of this pain. I can put an end to all of this hurt right now. I could do that right now. I could prevent all of that right now. He ignites his lightsaber, and then he thinks, no, I can't do this, because he did learn from his previous lessons, but it was too late. The mistake had already been made, and so I think that that's really kind of cool. And then also his character, when he's on the island, he's been cut off from the Force. He's been there alone for a long time. You don't think that psychologically that would mess with you? That you as a person, because let's not forget, Luke Skywalker is a person. He's a human. Would you really think that you could spend enough time alone on an island and not lose a part of yourself, not lose a part of your mind, become something that you weren't before? Especially because he had given it all up. He gave everything up. He was done. He exiled himself. He went to the island to die. He said that. Now, again, you can make the argument, then why did he leave a map to, you know, find himself? That's, I don't know. That's kind of crazy. Maybe when he still left, he was hanging on to a part of that, and he thought, you know what? I'm going to go away for a while. I'm going to leave a map, because maybe he thought someday they're going to need me like I needed Yoda. But then he kind of lost a part of that. He got there and he was so upset on it. He's been, you know, reliving this moment over and over and over again, probably, as he's been on this island, and he hates himself. It's terrible. So Rey shows up, he gets the lightsaber, and he's like, no, I'm done with this. I understand that it's a bad, you know, thing, but what am I to do about it now? I've already messed it all up, so, you know, whatever. So I don't think that Luke his character is far off, especially at the end of the movie. I mean, I loved the ending of the movie, the surprise where he's fighting Kylo and it's not really him, he's actually force projecting himself through the freaking galaxy for an extended period of time and having a lightsaber bat. I mean, that has to be one of the most amazing feats of force usage that we've ever seen in a Star Wars movie. That's so incredible. And the amount of strength and concentration and just force sensitivity, it had off the charts. So it like solidified that Luke really is a legend. He really is this phenomenal thing, but at the same time, he's also very flawed, and he has a lot of, you know, negative characteristics that everyone carries around. He's not some perfect being, and it was the perfect send-off. He's sitting on the rock, he sees the dual sunsets, you know, just like back home, and then he just becomes one with the Force. He doesn't die. Everyone keeps saying Luke is dead. They killed Luke off. He's not dead. He became one with the freaking Force. He didn't keel over and die. He became more powerful than you could possibly imagine. So everyone out there who's like, Luke is dead, I can't believe they killed him off, this is terrible. He's not dead. He's one with the Force. He's more powerful now. We should be happy for the guy. He made it. He's with his buds. You know, he's there. He's got Yoda. He's got Obi-Wan. He's got his dad. They're all chilling, having a brewski in Force heaven or whatever the heck they are. So, you know, Luke was totally cool in The Last Jedi in my book. I don't think he was so vastly different that it would be unfeasible for him to act the way that he did in the movie. I just don't see that. Another thing that I'm rambling here. I knew this was going to happen. I have a few notes made, but I have so many thoughts just running through my head. I've been thinking about this movie ever since I saw it. The Snoke not getting any backstory thing. Now, in my opinion, first off, he doesn't need a backstory. Would it be cool? Yes. Yes, it would. And the explanation, I'm sure, would be phenomenal. How do we get this crazy, strong dark side user? But his backstory is not directly relevant to the current plot line. All we need to know currently about Snoke is that he somehow influenced Ben to come to the dark side. He changed his heart and he trained him in the ways of the dark side. And then Kylo kills him, which was freaking brilliant. Oh my gosh, Snoke he was so overconfident, and he's like, I can see your every move, and you're turning the lightsaber, and Ben is like literally turning his lightsaber in his hand, and he's the mind screwery right there was so great. And then he's igniting it to kill his true enemy, and he slices Snoke in half. That was brilliant. That was so freaking cool. Like, the mind game alone in that was so freaking sweet. And now this Snoke character, everyone was like, oh, who's Snoke? Oh, he's gonna be the... But we don't need another new emperor, okay? We don't need that position. I want... Kylo was the more interesting character anyway. He's literally the more interesting character of the two. Snoke was just this powerful dark side user who may or may not have a relevant backstory. But you know what? We also didn't have a backstory to the emperor when those movies came out. He was just a really powerful old guy who was versed in the dark side of the Force. So maybe we will get a backstory to Snoke eventually. Maybe we won't. But they don't. The point is, they don't have to give us that. His purpose has been set. So, you know, whether it's annoying or not that we don't learn any more about his character, his plot usage is done. He converted Ben into Kylo, and now he's gone. Kylo has solidified his Sith training because he just killed his master. He just did it. He just completed it. And I thought that was really cool. That whole scene. And then, oh Lord, Kylo and Rey fighting together. And it wasn't like, you know, twirlies and flippies and blah, 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 blah. The lightsaber fights in the prequels were amazing because they're so cinematic and they're choreographed and they look phenomenal. But the reason that the lightsaber battles in the original trilogy still hold up today is because they're emotional. They're driven by the Force. Like, Luke has no significant lightsaber training whatsoever, and yet he's able to take down Vader because through the Force, he's conveying his emotion, and it's just raw, like, Force usage. Ugh! And the same thing in The Last Jedi when they're fighting together, and it's not like this fluid, flippy, twirly, you know, wow, everything is beautiful thing. It's like just so, I was so hyped up. It was great. And then she like drops the thing and ignites it, and then Ben tosses it. I'm just making sound effects right now. I'm reliving it in my head because it was so freaking cool when he ignites it in the dude's eye. Woo! And then you think for a second, you're like, oh my gosh, she did it. Kylo Ren has turned. And then you're like, but wait, where's the movie going to go? And then Kylo Ren is like, ha, JK, join me, and together we can rule the galaxy as father and son. Well, not father and son, but you get my point. I also don't have a problem with Rey coming from nowhere. I actually think that's really cool because it blasts open the future of Star Wars. No longer do you have to be a Skywalker to be someone really powerful. And Snoke literally says that when the darkness rises, the Force creates the light to balance it out, and that is Rey. So Kylo and Snoke are over here, and the Force is like, bro, we gotta balance this out. Rey, bow, and there she is. And now we have, and then it's so perfectly set up. And people were arguing that the whole casino scene with Finn and Rose is just, it's terrible. Get it out of there. It's not necessary. It is so 100% necessary. I'm all over the place. I realize this, and I'm so sorry. And hopefully some of you are out there following me. The casino scene is so necessary because it drives home the fact that you're not always going to win. The whole movie is about failure. Literally, you think, because in other Star Wars movies, you think, man, they're never going to pull this off. And then they pull it off. It just works out. And the Death Star is destroyed. But it wasn't really destroyed. But then the next time they get it, it is destroyed. So, you know, it's not, it's failure. And it's beautiful because you don't expect it. Everyone had their expectations of what they thought was going to happen. And I think a big part of why people are upset is because those things didn't happen. But I enjoy those things. I would rather be surprised with cool stuff than, you know, go into the movie and be like, well, this is probably what's going to happen. And then bam, 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 that's what happens. I don't want that. I want you to tell me a story. I want you to tell me a story I don't know. I want you to take chances. I want you to be risky. So the casino thing was 100% necessary. Finn had to go and he had to fail. And then also people were saying, oh my gosh, Finn should have just died. He should have just crashed into the thing. They took away his hero moment. He was effectively the entire reason why the Resistance is now perished. There's hardly anyone left. They can all fit on the Millennium Falcon. They should have just let him die because that would have been his redeeming quality. No! He is now perfectly set up to be the hero we need him to be in episode 9. His character transition is insane. He went from a person who literally just wants to run away and escape and get out of there as fast as humanly possible to wanting to get out of there as fast as humanly possible, but also wants to take care of his friend Rey, to trying to save the entire Resistance because he felt that it was the right thing to do, but also he was still just trying to get back to Rey, to literally realizing that he is going to sacrifice himself for the good of everyone else. That the character development there is insane. So at that moment, we're like, oh my gosh, Finn's our hero. But then Rose comes in and saves him, basically tells him that no, you know, dying a useless death, because we saw so many useless deaths in The Last Jedi already. There were so many deaths that were effectively pointless because even though maybe it bought them a little bit of time, it didn't effectively, it did nothing to the First Order. Nothing. So in the grand scheme of things, it's better to be alive and helpful and a symbol of hope than it is to kill yourself on, because just because you sacrifice yourself, that doesn't automatically make you a hero. Like, sure, I mean, you are a hero because you did this amazing thing for your friends, but that's not, you're just not. There are other ways to, better, smarter, more intelligent ways to be a hero. And so I think that Rian Johnson has really set up the 4 characters that we need to be set up in the next movie. Kylo is perfectly set up to be the villain. He is solidified as the villain. Snoke is dead. Kylo is the villain. Rey is perfectly set up to be the new Jedi. Luke just said he will not be the last Jedi. Rey is perfectly set up to take that role. So we have our villain. We have our Jedi. Finn is now perfectly set up to be the hero that we need him to be. He's learned all the lessons that he's needed to learn. Poe is now ready to be the leader that we need him to be. The whole movie, he was struggling to be a leader. He kept making poor decisions because he thought that blowing things up and running in head first was the best way to solve a problem. It's not always the best way. And that's why Leia and Holdo both were like, I like that guy. And they were trying to teach him a lesson the whole time. And now he's perfectly set up to be the leader. Everything is so perfectly set up, and it's so wide open for a new generation of Star Wars. We have new Force abilities. We have new Force users. We have a new interesting villain. We have all these characters that can, you know, grow and become something else. At a certain point, we have to let the old stuff go. The Skywalker line eventually has to come to an end. Now, Kylo is still there, and, you know, he's been Solo / Skywalker, but still, eventually it has to come to an end. We want to see Star Wars grow into this new thing. We don't want it to perpetuate itself over and over and over and be the same thing, because it's crazy that people said The Force Awakens is a copy of A New Hope, and they didn't like it because it was too much the same. And now they're saying that The Last Jedi was too different. It was too out there. Like, it's crazy. It's just I don't know. I really enjoyed the movie. I don't think that there was anything, you know, incredibly wrong with anything presented in the movie. I think Rian Johnson did a great job. And by the way, I'm not paid by Disney. I wish I was, but I am not. But I'm sure some people in the comments are going to say, well, this guy's just, you know, whatever. No, I'm just a huge fan of Star Wars. I really enjoyed the movie. I want to see it 100 more times, and I cannot wait for episode 9. I'm so excited for the future of Star Wars. Let me know with a comment down below what you guys think. I don't even know how long this video is. Probably way too long. Hopefully you guys stuck it out. But I really wanted to just talk about it because I kept thinking like I should tweet this out, but then it would have been like 100 tweets. And again, please don't attack each other in the comments. For crying out loud, it's just a movie. And if we're all going to be Star Wars fans here, then let's just be Star Wars fans together. We can talk about what we liked and what we didn't like. But there's no point in calling each other names or being, you know, saying that someone's stupid because they liked or didn't like it, because it just doesn't get us anywhere. So yeah, have fun with it. Let's talk in the comments. I'll be down there talking to you guys as well. If you enjoyed this little, you know, crazy rant thing, whatever this was, make sure you hit that like button. And if this is your first time stopping by the channel, I usually do a lot of Dragon Ball Z anime stuff, but I do love Star Wars. But if you're interested in those other things, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Stick around. Let's have some fun. And as always, I'll talk to you in the next video. Later.